Mazda 3 needs no introduction, but I'm going to give you one anyway. The small car is the brand's most popular, its biggest selling model, and in fact, since 2003, globally they've sold 6 million of them. So, it's an important vehicle. It's hard to believe this is the 4th generation version of the Mazda 3 already. And in this iteration, it takes what we've known about the car for a long time and finesses it. It's more daring in its styling, more upmarket inside, and better to drive. So, let's take a closer look at the new Mazda 3. Of course, it's available as a 4-door sedan, which I think looks gorgeous in this generation, and as a 5-door hatchback. Now, about the hatch, let's talk about the rear. I think it looks just a bit awkward at the rear. This pillar is huge, and it's also a bit awkward to see from the driver's seat because it creates a big blind spot. But there's one thing that you need to know. It's very Mazda in its design, and for that reason, plenty of people will love it. You can bank on the high-spec model looking pretty much like this when it arrives in the middle of 2019. Make of it what you will in terms of exterior styling. I think the interior is where it's most striking. In mid to high grade models, you can expect leather seat trim plus heated seats and dual zone climate control. Top models will get a 12-speaker Bose stereo system, but even the standard 8-speaker unit is excellent. The good news is that the tiny little screen that used to pop up out of the dashboard is gone. There's still a pop-up screen, but it's a bigger version, an 8.8-inch high-definition screen, and you can control it using the MZD rotary dial between the seats. New for Mazda 3 is Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You can retrofit it in the previous version, but it's standard in every model of the new generation. Plus, there's Bluetooth phone and audio streaming, USB connectivity, and in higher grades, you'll get wireless phone charging. The bad news is that you need to use the rotary dial controller for CarPlay and Android, which is annoying. It doesn't really mirror a phone if it's not a touchscreen now, does it? The whole design of the cabin has been improved and the materials are beautiful. There's a lovely steering wheel with nice buttons on it, and these touch points across here and these lovely knobs all feel really high quality. As well as that, the fonts match better this time around. In the previous generation version, there were some weird mismatched fonts. In terms of storage, you've got a decent sized center bin in here. There are cup holders up front, of course, and you get decent sized door pockets as well with bottle holders. Now, what about that back seat? The Mazda 3 has never been a pace setter when it comes to back seat space, and in this generation version, it doesn't really change the game either, but it is comfortable enough for someone my size. 182 centimeters tall, driver's seat in my position. I've easily got enough knee room and foot room and headroom to be comfortable back here for a reasonable amount of time. You wouldn't want to fit 3 of me across, it is a bit narrow still. In the version we're in right now, there are no rear air vents, which is a bit disappointing, but you do get things like a flip down center armrest with cup holders and bigger storage pockets in the doors than previously. If you don't think this is very kid friendly, then maybe you could just buy a CX-5. Boot space is improved for the sedan, but the hatchback's cargo hold is smaller than the model it replaces, and it was already one of the smallest in the segment. The sedan is the smarter buy if you regularly use a lot of boot space. So, that's the exterior and interior rundown. What's it like to drive? The version we're driving now isn't entirely representative of what we'll get in Australia. It's a US spec 2.5 litre sedan, and it has a different suspension tune, it has different tyres and a slightly different transmission tune as well. What it all means is that we can't give you the ultimate impression of what the car is going to be like when it gets to Australia, but we can tell you that it is an improvement on the previous generation version in pretty much every way. Mazda's gone to great lengths to stiffen the chassis and make it feel more comfortable on the road. And to me, I mean, it's not Australia, this isn't a Sydney backstreet, but it does feel better than I remember. New measures have been taken to improve the refinement on offer in the Mazda 3. So improvements to noise, vibration and harshness. There's a dual wall system underneath which helps quietened things down. And I tell you what, it does seem a lot quieter than I remember in the last Mazda 3 I drove. That said, we're not on coarse chip roads like we get in Australia. This road is pretty smooth, and it'll be really interesting to see just how much of a difference all those changes have made when we do get to drive it in the middle of 2019. In Australia, that is. As for the engines, as I said, this is the US spec with the 2.5 litre engine. Not a whole lot has changed. The transmission's been tweaked a little bit, but it does feel zesty enough for most people's needs. There'll be a 2 litre petrol as well, as we all know. That'll probably be offered in the lower grades, and you'll probably still be able to get it with a manual and an automatic. Maybe expect just the 2.5s to get an auto only. There could be a 2.5 litre turbo engine version of the Mazda 3 as well. We'll have to wait and see whether it actually happens, but it could offer a really interesting alternative to a WRX STI, for example. And yeah, you might expect it with all-wheel drive as well. That's how it sits in the CX-5 and CX-9. We wouldn't expect anything different in a Mazda 3. Other engines we can expect include the very high-tech Skyactiv X petrol engine, which uses a diesel compression style setup. It's pretty hard to explain. You can watch our other video on it that Mal Flynn did, and he explains it really, really succinctly. That high-tech sizzler won't be offered until probably 2020, and it'll be an interesting alternative to the regular petrol or diesel engines in other markets. We won't get a diesel in Australia. That's pretty much ruled out because it's such a small segment of the market. Another point that has taken me a little bit by surprise is the brake pedal response. It feels a lot more solid than the previous version, which had a bit of an airiness at the top of the pedal. This one is, well, you put your foot down and it feels like it's instantly grabby, and it's got a really nice progression if you do need to get on the anchors pretty hard. It's impressive. On the car we're driving now, it's an all-weather tyre, and they don't feel as good as our tyres will. So that's a good thing. We'll get better tyres than this car has. Not that they're terrible, it's just maybe not as grippy or as towy at the front end as you might want. So overall, my impression of this new Mazda 3 is a very good one. I mean, it's only been a brief drive in cars that don't really represent what we'll get in Australia, but I can tell you that it's going to be a very big seller, and it's going to be very successful for the brand. The Mazda 3 has always been a car that's sold as much on its merits as its design, and in 4th generation, guys, it is bound to be yet another success story for the brand. I can't wait to see how it's priced and what it's like to drive on Aussie roads. But until then, I'm interested in hearing from you. Let us know what you think of the new Mazda 3 in the comments section below, and also don't forget to subscribe.